Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who can help you maximize your team's digital output, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. I'm Sean Callanan, and welcome to episode 395 of Sports Geek. This week, I chat with John Wolfe. He's the Manager of Product Design at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Don't forget, you can find me across socials at Sean Callanan, across X, Instagram, and probably my favorite platform really is LinkedIn. You can find me. If you can't find me on socials, I'm doing something wrong. But please reach out, and you can also use email, Sean at SportsGeekHQ. I love hearing from podcast listeners, but more importantly, I love helping them solve problems. So if there's something I can do to help you solve a digital problem, sponsorship problem, marketing, ticketing, that's the wheelhouse that we work in. Happy to help you. Please reach out. And don't forget, you can listen to Sports Geek at sportsgeekhq.com, where a whole archive of all podcasts are, including our throwback series. Our throwback series comes out once a week, where I dive back into the archive and share some of the amazing nuggets of wisdom from our guests. With a big archive, there's a lot to dive into, and so it can be daunting if you've found the podcast recently and you don't know where to go. I do suggest go check out the throwback because it gives you a nice entree serve of an episode, and you can always go and have the full episode later on. So this episode, I get my geek on and we talk apps and user experience with John Wolfe at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. So please enjoy my chat with John. Very happy to welcome John Wolfe. He's the Manager of Product Design at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. John, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here and geek out with you for the next hour.
No problems at all. Always happy to get my geek on. I always ask people how they got their start in the world of sports. What about yourself? How did you get your start in the world of sports?
Yeah, so it was a long road. I was preparing to answer this question, and I was doing some math, and I've been a designer for 15 years. Always had a passion for design, always had a passion for sports, and just really luckily about 4 or 5 years ago, I got the opportunity to kind of blend the two together. And I don't think that was ever really something I set out to do. It kind of just organically happened. I think at the end of the day, I just continued to put my best foot forward, work really hard, build fantastic networks and relationships, and show up to work every day doing what I love. And, when you do that in any industry, eventually opportunities kind of, come by naturally. Having worked in various different industries, the sports industry kind of, like I said, as I mentioned, came up about 4 or 5 years ago. And, it was being from Toronto, born and bred, raised, growing up watching the Leafs, Raptors. It was somewhat of a unbelievable opportunity, and I had to almost take a step back and couldn't believe, I guess, it was actually a real opportunity for me. I would say it was just kind of came by organically, and I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity and seized it.
I mean, that design to developer space, and like I told you before we started, I was a coder developer before Sports Geek. You do have the ability to sort of jump to different industries because, when I was a coder, they're all ones and zeros, they're all use cases, they're all about the data flow. And then from a design point of view, it's, how do you onboard users? And it's, slightly different for the web and different for mobile. So did you have sort of that background of being able to change to different industries and sort of see how those customers acted differently? And then did you have to learn something new coming in as a how sports fans are different to, if you're doing an app for a bank or you're doing an app for another consumer product? At sports, was there some learning curve on what sports fans want?
Yeah, that's absolutely a fantastic question. I think it's funny that you mentioned banking because I feel like any designer, it's a rite of passage to have to work for a bank, right? There's always work there, and it's I wouldn't say it's the most exciting work, but it's definitely important work to do. But yeah, in the sense of sports, you don't realize, how cyclical it is, but when you're sitting on this side of it and you realize that there is a game that on Sunday as we're recording this, and we got to be ready. Like there's no pushing it out by a day. There's no pushing it by an hour. The puck's dropping at 7 p.m. Sunday. So you better be ready. You better have staff prepared and everything tested as much as possible. So I think that was probably the biggest learning curve, which makes it both exciting and terrifying at the same time. I think also like there is really no off season. We call it off season, but like, as soon as, call it end of April, May, June kind of rolls around, you're already getting ready for the next season about what you're going to do and with how you want to improve what you worked on this year.
I mean, that peaks and troughs thing is around the schedule of games is something that is very unique to sport. Like you said, spoken to people who work in the stadium side and the event side, it's like if the network's not working, as people are about to walk in the venue, you have to be a problem solver and fix it. And you have that same pressure. It's not like, oh, we'll just delay the launch of the app a week. It's like, no, the season's going to start at that point. So it does create that pressure and a little bit different from other industries.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's in tickets, right? Like our tickets are in the app and everything's digital now. So you're going to have 20,000 people that are going to be very happy they can't get to their seats and they better not miss puck drop, right? Or tip off or whatever you want to call it. So absolutely technology has kind of become that. And, every once in a while, you'll hear people just talking about having their old tickets back, right? But this is what's here to stay. And the goal is just to make it as easy as possible for anyone to get in and out. That should never be a friction point, right? Like getting into the arena.
So Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is an absolute beast of a sports and entertainment business. Just for people who don't know, what is the remit, of your role and the different teams and venues that effectively you service?
Yeah, wow. How much time do we have? Absolutely incredible company, what they've accomplished. So Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment owns the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Toronto Raptors, Toronto FC, Toronto Argonauts, Scotiabank Arena. They also own a venue called Budweiser Stage, a venue called History. They own BMO Field where the Argos and TFC play. And there's more as well. But, that's majority of the sports in Toronto. The news just kind of came out, actually, I believe yesterday. I'm sure you heard it, where Rogers is going to acquire Bell's rights and become majority shareholder of Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. So, it's a massive landscape shift in Canadian sports, and definitely excited to see what that means, right? Because they outright own the Blue Jays right now. So, that being said, getting back to your question, my role currently is to service the 4 team apps and the Scotiabank Arena app. I manage a cross-functional team of project managers, program managers, designers, UX researchers, product analysts. And on any given day, I'm reporting to or working with 20 different people from different business units, from F&B to retail to ticketing to global partnerships. And what's so interesting and amazing about this role is sitting in the middle of all of these business units. Everyone has a use for mobile, right? Whether it's a new way to be in touch with a fan or offer a promotion or create some sort of utility that they haven't had before inside the app. So the app can be different things to different people, and that's something that we're really striving for. So to answer your question, it's definitely do a lot more than just building the apps, but effectively at the end of the day, definitely setting the strategy and vision, creating engagement, and at the end of the day, trying to create value for fans in the app, and catering it to their needs, what they need when they want it.
I mean, one of the things I sort of picked out there when you're talking about is the utility of the app. I mean, I think in those early days of the sports fans app, the sports teams apps, they were sort of built as a destination. It's like, oh, this is where you need to go to consume our content and that kind of thing. But the stickiness really came when the app started to have utility, had a reason for you to open it every day, whether you were going to the stadium and integrating the ticketing, also all that home experience. How much is, I guess, that utility focus something that you're focusing on, or is paramount in the apps that you're designing?
Yeah, that's again a really good question. I think people use the app for different reasons, and we're really trying to take that to heart when we're designing. Having fans around the world, global fans, they don't really need to see tickets, right? Like if they ever get to go to a game ever once in their life, that's a one-time thing. So how do we make it so that they find value in the app and they're not just sifting through a bunch of promotions they can't use, right? There's nothing more frustrating than seeing something that you're, geolocated, locked out of entering. So how do we create those seamless, frictionless journeys for fans, no matter where they are in the world, without them even really knowing what they're missing or what they're not, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, when you can just have, again, a seamless experience, fans don't know what they don't know. And sometimes that's the best way to keep it, right? So as far as what type of utilities fans are looking for is, I think there's so many content aggregators out there. It's hard to compete with, op-ed pieces or editorial pieces and hot takes. And we definitely shy away from those. We try to bring more of like the player side because we have that capability, right? Like the things that fans really want to know about their players to make them feel like even if they're 1,000 miles away, that they this is their team and that they can understand and get the information that they want where they can't find anywhere else.
And is that a little bit of an extension of what the digital teams are doing on social? As a there's the teaser stuff, but then there's a little bit fuller and richer content in the app that sort of starts bringing more of those return visits?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's exactly what we're trying to do this year. Is we're really doubling down on content. We have an awesome partner called WSC who we've been working with for quite some time, and they actually just won Best Use of AI this past year at Sports Business Journal Tech Awards, and how we are looking to leverage their content and our apps, and how fans can see more of what they want to see just by watching things that they're already interested in and serving that stuff, right? It's important for fans to get what they want when they want. So I think that's content is always a good thing to have. Fans always want more and more and more, and as you mentioned, evergreen content's the best, but seasons go by quickly, and who really wants to watch a losing season or a playoff loss, right? So always looking for what's new and what's next.
So on the what's new and what's next, one of the trends in both league and team apps is, sort of following the leader of the IG story, the TikTokification, the verticalization of video. That's something that you've looked to roll out. Has that been something that powered by, tools like WSC to be able to get you that content quicker? But have you seen a good uptick on, more consumption, more thumbs swiping, in delivering that method?
Absolutely. I think it's something that you don't really get to control or, even strategize for. Again, it happened organically, it started with, was it Instagram, and then TikTok came along, and that's how fans are consuming content. So it only makes sense to use the engagement method, right? So we were very fortunate to right at the beginning of playoffs last year for the Leafs, and April, we rolled out our first variation and instance of the WSC, and we were able to get, the Instagram style stories of the playoff game highlights, and we saw amazing uptick. And the fans just grasped it. There was no, extra marketing push or even instructions on how to use it. It was just a very natural, organic flow, and it was really neat to see that happen. So we're definitely doubling down on that and looking to expand it to other teams. And I think it's definitely here to stay. What better way than to have your entire screen filled with amazing content and not have to turn your phone sideways, right? It's such a simple, silly thing to have to turn your phone sideways, but it is a friction point, right? So let fans consume content how they're consuming it in their favorite sports apps.
But it also removes the chokehold that the algorithms have on deciding, if I'm following the Raptors and I'm following the Leafs, like Instagram and TikTok are deciding if I'm going to see that content. So you can sort of say, well, there's no algorithms here. This is the content you want, and that's why the fans are leaning into that piece.
I actually didn't even think about that. That's a really good point. Not getting served irrelevant ads. And look, I don't think ads are bad as long as ads are relevant to you and what you're interested in. I've actually found a few really cool products before that I would never have found otherwise. So I think as long as that's the angle, like advertising, again, it's here to stay, right? It's not going away. Maybe the way things are served will change, but you're right. It's not serving something completely irrelevant. And one of the best use cases are implementations that I've seen is the Buffalo Bills app. I'm not sure if you've seen it. They have something called Bills Bits. and it's a navigational element on their main nav footer, and you hit it, and it's literally just TikTok, the entire thing. There's no instructions or anything, and I was kind of blown away, and I was like, this makes total sense, but I had not thought of it, right? And it's like sometimes the solutions are just so simple, and yeah, they've seen, as far as I know, crazy usage from that, and that's what fans want.
I mean, I use the phrase "steal with pride." If you see someone else doing something cool, how can you build it into what you do? Do you find yourself downloading far too many other team apps or league apps and swiping and testing and looking for different things that you can use?
You know it. I mean, one thing I do love about sports is it's a sense of community, because it's funny. I can actually pick up the phone or jump on LinkedIn and reach out to kind of any other team, and most of the time they're very willing to speak with you, right? The New York Islanders reached out to us before they built their app and said, "Hey, like, we really love what you did," and we were so happy to speak with them. Like, it's neat to have recognition by your peers, because a New York Islander fan's probably not going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, right? And that's okay. And so it allows for kind of that cross collaboration and like, hey, did this work for you? This didn't work for us. Well, why? And certain things work in different leagues, or they don't work in other leagues, and it's a really, really neat part of the industry that you're not going to do that at a bank. You're not picking up the bank and say, "Hey, RBC, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
At least not in my experience.
No, that's the thing. You're not. I mean, yes, there is a certain outreach for new fans, but you're right. Someone who is an Islanders fan isn't going to come across. So there is, you're talking to your own fans, especially in the app space. You talked a little bit about before around advertising and partner integration. That's becoming more and more important. As a deliverable for your commercial team and your sponsorship team. How do you both tackle that and sort of and manage that and integrate that into what you're offering, and trying to keep that balance? Like you said, you don't want someone opening up your app and it be full of ads and full of promotions. How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's a really fine line, isn't it? Because you put too much out there, and it's really drives people away. You don't do enough, and you're not making enough money to make ends meet, right? So again, it's a really, really fine line. And I think at the end of the day, the goal should always be to do it, to advertise and market in a situation that makes the most sense, right? So retail stuff. Do I get 10% off retail stuff at Maple Leafs, Real Sports? Then it makes sense to promote the credit card that allows us to do that, right? So it's a like nice to know. It's a value add. Everybody wins. But you're right. It is a constant battle of, okay, what's new? What are fans interacting with? What do they want to see? Are they local? Are they not local? Can they see this partnership opportunity? I mean, I think just the other day, the Oreo announcement was announced, where Oreo has sponsored our helmets, and we have milk on our jerseys. So I can't wait to see the activations that come through this year, right? The milk and cookies. It's going to be really neat to see. But yeah, it's always a fine line, right, Sean? And I don't think it's ever really done. I think you're just always kind of trying to do your checks and balances and make sure your servicing is all three sides, ideally, right? If you can, at the end of the day.
Yeah, most definitely. And it is a matter of also trying to understand where the commercial team and the partner is coming from, and try to make sure they're not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole to say, hey, what do you guys want? Because this type of activation or promotion or this works better in the app for that outcome. Are you sort of providing that, I guess, consultative approach back to the commercial team to sort of make sure you're getting the best fit?
Yeah, that's this is exactly what we do. We sit down with our global partnerships team, and we'll bring ideas to them first, and we'll say, hey, like, what do you think of this? Does this make sense? Because we would have already vetted that. My main goal is always fan value, fan engagement, growth, right? How can I benefit the fan? Because at the end of the day, that's what, for me, it matters the most. If our monthly active users is going down or not growing, then we're not doing something right. I can't necessarily get the fans in the door past ticketing purchases, but I can make sure they had a great experience and they're coming back. So what are the opportunities to do that? What are the offers we can help with? How does GP kind of fit into that? And we'll sit down and we'll strategize on some of the ideas that we'll bring to the table, and they'll say, hey, like, this is a great idea. We have a partner that'd be really interested in this, and we'll come right out of the gate ready to go, as opposed to just trying a few different things and seeing what does and what doesn't work, we'll already know. And so I'm very excited about that partnership. And I've only been running this team for about 2-3 years now. So we're still, and having just gotten the new apps out last year, we're still really doubling down and learning what the synergies are and the best way to do certain things are. But that's, I think I like to call it the trifecta, right? When you can win for the business, win for the fan, it's really important, and it's the ultimate outcome when all three win.
Most definitely. One of the things in apps is, we sort of spoke about utility, and ticketing is the obvious one, having the digital ticket in the app. Are there any other things that you've been putting into your apps that are in that in-stadium engagement, getting people to use the app when they're in the arena?
Yeah. So we're undergoing a massive renovation, actually a 3-year renovation right now. Really, really exciting. And so that creates both excitement and frustration, because certain gates will be closed. And so how do we help the wayfinding? How do we help fans just get to their seat, right? Like, the task can be daunting sometimes, especially in the middle of a Toronto winter, right? When it's really, really cold outside. So this year we're doubling down on things like we have something called a live activity for your ticket. So on your lock screen of your phone, it will show you, for the Leafs and the Raptors, it'll show you your seat location and row and whatnot. And how many times, yourself, when you go to a game, even though you sat in your seat for, half the game already, you go to the washroom, go get a drink, and come back, and you're always double, triple checking, but you're having to open and look at your ticket. And so, like, just those little things where it's like, it may not seem like the most useful thing, but when you're actually at the stadium, it helps a lot. It really does.
Yeah.
Another thing is just, understanding what food is where, at what level, what promotions are on your level. How can we segment the app to deliver a better experience for those who are actually in the arena? We've doubled down this year and have built a new section of the app that we're calling Game Day. And it's meant for both in venue and out of venue fans. And we're really, really excited to see how it improves how it was last year. We went from it was a bit of a static page last year, and we're really doubling down on the dynamicism of it to see, to get you what you want, depending on where you're at.
I mean, it's really good to hear those, really functional, really strong use cases, but they're not winning awards. They're not big shiny objects of, how are you rolling out the newest implementation or this new tech, and we've got to have this new shiny bell in our app. How do you balance, high value, high impact, but not high PR value, I guess, pieces like the one you just described to, hey, there's all this new tech that we want. We want the latest shiny thing in the app. How do you balance those type of, I guess, incoming features?
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of different considerations that go into it, but ultimately at the end of the day, we have incredible management here that help us, set our North Stars. And I think at the end of the day, what we really have tried to focus on this past couple of years is we want to have one big idea a season, ideally per quarter. But if we can do one really big thing per year and then get all the other little things right? It's 1% better each day. It actually is a massive impact in the end user experience. And so the amount, first of all, the season goes by very quickly, like way quicker than you think, right? So I think just being kind to ourselves, but I think just iterative design and iterative upgrades. It's really nice to just constantly see progress instead of just one big feature and nothing else. So we're always working towards something big, but we're always constantly releasing small updates as we go, which ultimately make big impacts.
I mean, one of those is, we've seen some apps playing around with the AR, XR, augmented reality, that kind of piece. Is that something you've played in and found, I guess, a functional use for that tech?
Yeah, definitely. We have stuff like that. I think what we actually doubled down on last year, our incredible team, which is called the Arcade or Fan Experience team, they built something that is more so projection based, I would say. So I'm not sure if you saw it, but it's called DJ Duel or Rink Racer. And what they decided to do was during intermissions, everyone knows when they used to go to a baseball game that they'd have like the scream meter and it's like 100 level cheer against 300 level.
Yep.
And whoever screamed the loudest, they would win. Well, they actually made it real, and they made it real with your cell phone being the center of the device feedback. And so during the first intermission, a few times last year, we'd have Carlton the Bear superimposed on the ice. All the lights turn out, and they'd have 100 level versus 300 level. And when you join the game, scan a QR code, you would tap. Each level would tap on their phone, and whoever cohesively tapped together the most, the Bear would skate faster on the ice. And so, I know you're talking about like AR, XR, but I think like that's a really nice like in between engagement type where there's still a feedback with like in your hand, but you're seeing something visually projected on the ice. And it was really, really cool to see them come up with something like that. And I definitely felt very gypped growing up, knowing that I always remember the day when I found out it wasn't real. It didn't matter how much I yelled. But now for our kids and the new generations to be like, no, like it actually matters. Like I actually can affect the outcome of that. I think it's just so neat. It's a cool use of tech.
Yeah, it is one of those myths that gets dispelled pretty quickly when you're working in sports and you find out that noisometer is just a video that they play every week.
Yeah.
But still, people cheer. But I do really love that. That gaming element and sort of getting people involved, and again having a reason for people to engage. And then you've also got that data piece of knowing, people are leaning in stadium. One of the things I did spot on your LinkedIn is you recommended a book, Hooked, by Nir Eyal, if I hope I'm getting his name on, and how to build habit-forming products. What are some of the things that you've applied from that book to put more habit-forming pieces in your apps?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it's about, there's a lot of psychology that goes into this stuff, and I know you've probably heard the word gamification over and over again. It's kind of gone away now, but it actually is a huge part of our day-to-day. Look at Duolingo. Look what they've done just by the daily reminders, right? Don't lose your streak. So that stuff's always in the back of my mind, absolutely. But I'm not trying to get anyone hooked on the app for any other reason than they're just a loyal fan and they just know where to go for the content. I feel like we have some sort of like need a moral compass for this type of stuff in this industry. And I think it's important to make sure that, while they find things useful, that they're still easy to break away and get back to reality and enjoy the game, right? Like the last thing we want is for the fans to be stuck on their phone when there's a live game happening, right? So again, that's, at what certain points are we engaging with the fans and when are we not? We created something, called Team Drop, where it's a chat and fans win prizes, and it's only before a game. We really don't do much during the game on purpose. Rink Racer runs during the intermission. So there was a lot of amazing information in that book, and it's scary when you read it a little bit of how they're able to do it, and you look at Instagram and TikTok, and like how many times have you you sit down for 5 minutes and before you know it's been 45 minutes. You said, what did I just do with that time, right? So I think the population is becoming more apparent to that, and I think it's a good thing. But at the same time, it was definitely a very fantastic read to understand the amount of research that they put into this stuff. But again, I think we have a moral obligation to do the right thing, right, on our end.
And I think you've sports apps in particular aren't in that Duolingo, Candy Crush, trying to pull you back in every day kind of, here's another shiny loot box to bring you back in, which, can be very, very habit forming. But like we're always working with either the digital teams, the marketing teams to have that cadence of, we want the fan has a routine that from game, on game day, whether they're going to the stadium or not, it's like, how can, your app and your content engage in those points? So whether it's I'm hopping on the train and I've got this 15-minute or 30-minute, and that's when I engage with the app, or as I walk in. And so it's sort of trying to get those key moments in that journey that you want the app to be part of. Is that sort of the habit forming that you want, which is a healthy one and part of their usual fan journey?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's exactly what we're doing this section called Game Day, right? Because we realize that game start, like the game journey actually begins from the moment you buy the tickets, right? Like you're already thinking about the day. What time are you going to get up? When are you going to leave? When are you going to meet your friend? Where are you going to go for dinner? What time do you have to leave out? What's the weather like? Like it's literally a checklist of things just to get to the game. Never mind once you're there. So any way that we can help with that is a massive win for us, right? Like we should remove those friction points and surface content or relevant information when needed. And again, it's not just about just going to the game, because there's only 20,000 seats on any given night, but millions of fans around the world. So again, how does the app adapt for those fans in those moments? And again, it's habit forming, right? Like that is why we launched a team chat for all of our sports teams, because fans do want to chat. It doesn't matter if they're not here or not. That our loyal fans always want to talk with other fans, and there's even been romances in some of the chats, right? And it's just so neat to see these people who have all this shared interest and camaraderie and cheer for the same thing, kind of get together on a nightly basis and just really enjoy a sport.
Well, we're recording this. We're effectively in the almost preseason for the NBA and the NHL. And your team's obviously putting in a lot of work to get that new build or that new launch of extra features. And there is a bit of a sigh of relief, when you hit launch and it goes live and you go, terrific.
Yeah.
But then, there's a lot of heavy lifting to tell the fans and market to them to say, hey, we've got this new feature, or, here's what game day looks like, or here's how to get around the stadium because of renovations. How do you work with your teams from a marketing and getting that message out to say, because your app's been around for years and years, you've got to either tell people to download it or, hey guys, it's not the app that you haven't used for 2 years, come back and check us out. What's that marketing piece look like to start pulling fans back in?
Yeah, so I think that's obviously always evolving with technology and whatnot. This year, Ticketmaster tickets will only be available in the app. So, right, there's a whole marketing push just for that. And although that's not a singular primary use, it is a massive use for the app for anyone who goes, right? So like it's almost a natural progression on that side, or a natural thing that happens because they're going to need it. So just by that one thing alone, the app downloads will go up. On the other side, last year we wrote a whole campaign called New Season, New App, because it's the first time we redesigned our apps in a few years. And it was really neat. We had, some of the star players. I wrote a player script, and we had some of the star players read it, and they posted on social media with links back to the app, and we were able to track success metrics and KPIs that way. And it's pretty surreal to see, come up with an idea and see a star you idolize and have been watching read something that you came up with off the top of your mind, and then have it be live, right, for other people to see. And then never mind that, it's the feedback that you get, right? And unfortunately, you always get more negative feedback and positive feedback on the internet. I'm sure you hear all about that. But yeah, it's always obviously evolving. And I think at the end of the day, we're always looking for those massive key moments through the fan season. Last year we had All-Star, right? So that was a big opportunity for us here in Toronto. And I think it would have been over 20 years since I've been here. So we look at the key moments on the calendar. What are the big games? What are the big rivalry games? What are the theme nights? And we try to, weave in a story on the app side as well.
So when you have a big event like all the tickets being in the app, and you're effectively going to get this guaranteed new traffic, but they're going to be new fans that, are almost only downloading the app because they get the ticket. So it's almost like a hostage situation in a sense. And they're like, I've got to download another app. But it really makes onboarding super important. Was that something you I guess, looked at again to go, oh, here's someone that's, getting it from a ticketing point of view. They might not be as a big of Leafs fan as an Avs fan or a big Raptors fan. Mm-hmm. Has that onboarding piece been something you really focus on to make sure that experience is easier and better for them and they get that sort of ticket onboarding experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, like I said before, they don't know what they don't know. So if they don't know that they can get this really cool feature of like the live activities for their tickets on the home screen, or even just the score, right? The live score on the home screen, then that's a massive miss for us. And typically, you want to go with, the most frictionless features that people will find the most value in. And then naturally they will find the other maybe more complicated features. So call it the low hanging fruit or whatnot. But yeah, it's definitely a priority of ours to get just those simple things. And I don't want to use terms from the book Hooked, but yeah, right. Like, how do you hook them to say like, hey, like this is actually really valuable, and I find this a value add to my game day experience.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think that digital ticketing is, effectively a gateway to say, hey, here's all the other things that we're offering. I wanted to get your take on the explosion that is AI. I mean, it's obviously very much disrupting the world of content and writing, but it's also something that is available as a tool for coders from a debugging point of view. You can also tackle it from a design point of view. Is it something that you're starting to play with and sort of exploring how it can be used both for yourself, but then also inside your team?
Absolutely. I think if you don't use it, then you're going to fall behind very quickly. It's obviously here to stay. It's definitely far from perfect. We've used it a few times over the past couple of years. As mentioned, WSC, one of our partners, definitely has maximized it to its potential, and we're harnessing that. I think there's a lot of fantastic use cases like game recaps or game previews, right, where it can very easily pull historic matchups versus those two teams, what to watch for, how the night had gone the previous night. But it's just not where it needs to be right now. I think we'll probably, it seems like there's a new ChatGPT version every month now. So I would imagine by the end of this year, we'll be in a really, really good spot. And, fans want to consume content however they prefer, right? It should be up to them what media they choose. So they want to read about a game preview or watch it, we should have both those things on it. And I'm really excited as a fan to see that as well, because maybe you have bad reception and you're on the train or on the subway and you just want to read. But I think again, there's tons of use cases and specifically sports. And I think sports is also very happy to embrace technology. NBA has done a fantastic job with that. They're constantly pushing the envelope. Same with the NFL. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be tons more use cases that kind of rear their head in this year alone.
Yeah, I mean, initially I was looking at it from that content point of view, but yeah, more recently I've sort of been sucked back into the world of coding, because now you can literally, go to something like Claude and say, please redesign this page. Here's a screenshot. How else could it be done? And it can write the code, but also start doing some design. So, I think there is a future where I remember doing pair programming with another programmer, and we would sort of work on each other's code. Like, that can be an AI code assistant or an AI designer that can, give you 6 more iterations of what that screen might look like that, you might not have thought of. So it is going to be interesting to see how it helps and potentially quickens development, or also the development of these AI, chatbots. Like, if you want to have a fan, if you want to be talking with a fan while you're watching a Raptors game, we might be at a point where it's a bot that gets developed and it's just talking to the fan, and it produces that stickiness and that on the couch experience. So there's so much in that space.
What about if I wanted a broadcaster's voice, a certain broadcaster's voice, like Snoop Dogg or whoever I wanted to be, running the broadcast? Like that stuff's all going to be, obviously, broadcast rights aside, right? Like that's TBD, but like that stuff is already technically possible. It's just about getting alignment on it. So obviously the future is personalization, another word that I'm not like a huge fan to use, but that's where we're going, and it's exciting. And the fans deserve it, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, like, you should have the experience that you want. And yeah, AI will definitely take us there, but it's gonna still a lot of room to go. But I think it's definitely here to stay.
Yeah, and it is going to be, again, following what other apps and how they're better in, integration of the AI, and that's where I think it will be. It'll be integrated, like you said. We're already using a lot of tools that are using AI/machine learning that are in that same space, like WSC, that is picking the best highlight because of this and cutting it this way.
Exactly.
I think that's where that integration piece where most of the AI will be used. But yeah, being able to use it as a co-pilot, which is obviously Microsoft's version, but like, I think, being able to have that assistant. I have been asking guests recently about their tech stack and some of the tools that they use on a regular basis. What are some of the tools that are in your toolkit or your team's toolkit that are helping you do what you do?
I'll be honest, Figma. We do screens, prototypes, we do presentation decks. We live in there. You can literally get a design to be so realistic by mirroring it on your phone that we've had people say like, this isn't live. They think it's a real app. And having grown up in this industry, going from Photoshop to Sketch to where we are now, it's absolutely incredible. And I hate to say it, but like designers have this power to make thoughts and ideas be real, right? Like, and things you can interact with. And it's such an amazing thing to have an idea and to test it right away and be able to launch it and get feedback. We're at this amazing place in time right now where it's so easy to get that data and get feedback and make an informed data driven decision. Right. So Figma is definitely day in, day out across the whole team. That's how I'd answer that.
I mean, it does feel like all the tools that are available are sort of aligned with that Mark Zuckerberg phrase of, make things fast, break things, and get that learning. Is it something that you sort of align with to say, hey, we want to test this? What is the minimum viable product look like? How can we get it in? And then, it is something that we want to do and it can expand?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a pretty good segmentation done over here, and we're always trying to figure out what's going to work and what's not, and what may work for someone may not work for someone else. And I think that's what's probably the most difficult thing about having the 4 different team apps, because we purposely designed and launched all 4 apps last year as very similar styles and layouts, but we know that they will eventually change based on usage patterns, and it's up to us to keep ahead of those curves, because what may work for the Argos app may not work for the Raptors app, just by way of the fans and demographics and their age and whatnot. So it's really neat, but also like a very big thing that we have to keep our eye on.
Do you, from an architecture point of view, try to keep all of those apps pretty modular? So if you're going to run something on the Argos and it works well, then it is easy to pick up and transform and take across to the Leafs. Is that something that's both an advantage but also constricts you a little bit because you're like, I want to keep everything, have some transportability?
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think first of all, you need to always be testing, right? You always need to see, well, is this going to work? Like, if it works here, does it work there? And by keeping it modular, it does allow you to test those things. And I think, again, we owe it to the fans to see how they respond to it at the end of the day. But we are very fortunate in that sense that we have the 4 teams to try different things with, right? And see what works. So, WFC was a perfect example. It was a massive hit for the Leafs. And so we're going to roll it out with the Raptors, right? And so things like that. But how we start and what we start on and that changes as the seasons go on. That's for sure.
We sort of spoke about it before, whether you're a coder or a designer, there is a lot of similarities in different industries, but sport has its, differences. Like you do get pretty unvarnished feedback on social media from sports fans that you wouldn't do at a bank because no one has so much passion, as they do as a sports fan.
Yeah.
Have you got any advice for someone that wants to work in the world of sports that has tech and design skills like yourself?
Yeah, it's not the easiest industry to obviously break into, but I think at the end of the day, if you show your passion, and I think at the end of the day, if you can go above and beyond your expectations, which is definitely easier said than done, right? It is easier said than done. But if you can do more than what's required of you and show that you're thinking about outside the box, bringing different initiatives that someone else hadn't thought of. I will shout out a team member right now, Deneen Stevanato on our team. She was in ticketing for 9 years, and she expressed a desire to get into design, and we made that opportunity happen for her, and she is absolutely crushing it on our team and has become an insanely valuable member with what she's done. And so there are those opportunities there, right? Here's an example of someone who went from ticketing and made this happen with the opportunity. But, those are few and far between, right? But all you can do is put yourself in that position. So however, if you really want to work for a sports team, do whatever you have to do to get in, and just kind of go from there.
I mean, I think it is a growing, I guess, segment of sport. A lot of that app development, website development has been either outsourced or managed centrally, and there's been more teams going, we want more control, we want to tell our story, we want to do our own app, which is a big endeavor. It's not an easy thing to say, hey, we want to do our own app, and it is a particular set of skills. That's not just, hey, I know sports. You've got to know how to design, you've got to know how to code and deploy and all of those things. So, yeah, I think there is opportunities there, but like you said before, those deadlines, they don't move, and so being able to manage, which feature's going in, which feature is good enough to go in, and hitting those deadlines, that's the pressure that sport has that I don't think other corporates or other industries necessarily have.
But you've never felt so alive.
No, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. You get those peaks and valleys of, 15,000 people, 20,000 people going into the stadium that are all using your app in that 3-hour period. Yeah. You don't get that in, other industries. If you're building an app for a supermarket or, in finance, you don't get those peaks and troughs, but also that euphoria, like you said, of a win, and boom, everyone's coming in and consuming your content, or, tapping their phone furiously to watch the rink race. So like those kind of things are definitely the rewarding parts of sports.
Yeah. When you see someone using it and they're like, oh, this is really cool. You're like, really? I spent all the time on this other feature, and that was like just a low level effort feature, but that's what they really enjoy. You're like, you don't get to choose, right? It's up to them. But I will say, this last year on my birthday, we were launching the Raptors app at 5 a.m. That was just the day where it happened, and the Leafs was also a 5 a.m. Launch time. So they're very good to us here, but that's part of what is required in this industry. And so if you're not prepared to do that, then you probably won't get too far. But again, it's because you have a passion for it, right?
Most definitely. And I mean, as we're discussing it, there's currently a content trend where admins and digital folk are going up to players and showing and getting them to sign old Facebook photos. Right? It's currently everywhere. Everyone's doing it as a current trend. But I think the one for the developers is go up to a developer and say, "Here's your app from 5 years ago." And you would get the same. You would get the same reaction, or here's what the app looked like in 2015. It's like, oh my goodness, we've come such a long way. So, like, I think I think you would get the same reaction from developers and designers. Goes, oh, that's right, that's what our app looked like 5-6 years, because they've changed so much in the past 10 years, let alone 5.
Right. That's not even that long. It's not even that long ago, which is so incredible. Like 5 years ago, and it's so outdated already. Right. It's I've been doing this since 2008. To think about back then what we had, it's laughable. So who knows where we'll even just be in 5 years.
Is there any tech on the horizon? Whether it be driven by new smartphones, that is already on your radar to go, well, we've got to figure out how to use that piece of tech.
The whole Apple headset was really neat. Obviously, it just, you're not going to see people walking around wearing it, although some people did. There's the XR AR glasses and superimposing stats of a game you're watching. There's it being on your coffee table and projected up. All that stuff's on the horizon. Absolutely. It's just what's going to be the most adaptable. I don't see a cell phone being the main item in the future. I do think glasses will probably eventually take over, right? I don't know how far that is. It's just too cumbersome to have to carry this thing around in your pocket. And wouldn't you just like to look at something and then be able to, think about what it is you want it to say? So I'm not trying to get too far in the future here, but I can definitely see that the input of the search will change.
And is it, it's a little bit that sports isn't on the leading edge of a lot of those techs. It's a little bit of where do the streamers go? Where do other other industries go to sort of break new ground to make that either that tech or that product more useful, more people using it, and then you go, okay, the ground has been broken. We can figure out how we might use whether that platform or that new tech stack for sports?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, being who we are, we definitely invest in that type of stuff, right? Like, we want to know, we want to try to push those boundaries of what's going to be usable. But at the end of the day, it's about, market adoption, right? So now cell phones is what everyone's using right now. So we're definitely mostly focused on that. But we definitely have a division called SportsX that focuses on that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I look back at for a while there, Facebook was pushing 360-degree video, and you'd hold your phone up and look all around, and it had a little bit of cool factor. But then people were doing 360 whole streams. It's like it didn't have the length of people going in there watching the stream for forever, so it didn't quite catch on. So sometimes, if you're too far on that, bleeding edge, you're putting too much effort into something that's not really going to take.
Yeah, absolutely.
John, I want to get to the Sports Geek closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Yeah, Toronto Blue Jays. Definitely was yelling as loud as I could, thinking that I was making an impact with that the noise level meter in the outfield there. So exciting. Yeah,
I've been to a Blue Jays game. It's a good place to watch a game. You would have obviously been to a lot of sports events, and as much as the app development scene has grown in the past 20 years, so has the food scene in at sports. Do you have a favorite food memory or a go-to food?
I never got to actually try this, but I always wanted to try something called the Roethlisberger. I don't know if you'd ever heard of it, from Pittsburgh Steelers. They used to have a quarterback named Ben Roethlisberger, and they got an idea to make a burger in the stadium that was a patty with sausages and cheese and fried eggs. It's just the most absurd thing you probably have ever heard, and I always got a good kick out of that. Never got to try it though.
That would definitely be a mouthful. Managing multiple teams across multiple properties, app deploys at 5 a.m. What's the first app you open in the morning?
It's got to be The Score. I love my aggregate news from all over. I like the opinion pieces. I like to know what's going on in the sports world. Fantastically well-designed app out of Canada.
And is there someone that you follow? It might be someone you follow on a social, or it might be an author that the podcast listeners should give a follow, and why?
I just found this gentleman this past year, and his name's Alex Coppola. I'm not sure if you heard of him. He's incredible, a lot of presence on LinkedIn with partner sponsorships and engagement tactics and whatnot. And I really like how he basically services things that other teams are doing. All right. And so it's become like a really great resource for us to see how other teams are executing certain partnerships and marketing campaigns.
And then lastly, you can answer this from a personal point of view, and you can put on a team hat or two on. But what social media platform is your MVP?
For connecting with people, definitely LinkedIn. And then for just ruckus and news, X, absolutely. Two very different breeds of people on there, but both definitely valuable.
Terrific. And John, if people listen to this episode and want to reach out and know more, or at least say thank you for taking the time, what is the best way for them to do so?
You can definitely find me on LinkedIn at John Wolf. And there's definitely a few of us out there with that name, but I'm the one that works at MLSE. So, definitely appreciate this. Sean, really thank you for taking the time and speaking with me.
Not a problem. Really appreciate it, and talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
Looking to help your digital or sponsorship team? Book in for a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan to help your team level up. Book now at sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain.
Thanks again to John Wolf. Please connect with him on LinkedIn and tell him you listened to the episode. Reach out and say thank you. I really do appreciate it when I hear from a podcast guest that say people randomly reached out via the internet and said they listen to the podcast. That gives me a big sigh of relief that there are people out there doing it, and I'm not shouting into a void. But please let them know you listen to this episode. There'll be links to connect with John and see what he's up to at sportsgeekhq.com/395. It was really great to catch up with John, especially he's so heavily involved in the app design, customer journey, user experience space. it is a space of my former life. Before I was a sports geek, I was a geek. And I used to be a coder developer and did a lot of stuff on client side and then some web stuff. And then near the end of my developer career, did a little bit in the app development space, in the early iPhone stuff. And, you know, at the moment with this, with the advancements in AI, and it's something that I'm starting to get my geek back on. And that's diving a little bit into the code, but also looking at what the no-code tools look like. But then also what the AI opportunities are. And my question is it something that you're investigating? Because I think you should be. You know, how can you use the artificial intelligence, LLMs, to, you know, look for efficiencies? And that's something that I'm working on at the moment. Strategies on how sports can leverage these AI tools, whether they're built into tools you currently have, or how can you leverage the tools that are there, you know, whether it be for efficiencies, from a data analysis point of view, from a personalization point of view, from a data point of view, from a content workflow point of view. There's a lot of opportunities there. So if it is something that you are interested in, or it is something that an itch that you must scratch is the way I should put it, please reach out, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Like I said, I'm really enjoying getting back into the ones and zeros, into the code and building things a little bit, and really setting up that strategy for clients to help understand how to use it. So please get in touch. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com is how you can find me. But until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Do you get Sports Geek news? Sean Callanan analyzes the latest sports business articles for you weekly. Sign up at sportsgeekhq.com. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.